Bonjour, Tinamagin Ireland Dishnikas, and welcome to this production of Social Studies Explorer. Today, we will be reviewing for tomorrow's assessment of Chapter 4. For this video, we are going to do a quick overview using the standards that you can see on your screen. We're going to talk a little bit about each thing, not in great detail, but at least to give you an overview in case you were not in class. So we begin with wondering about significant settlements in the southern colonies, patterns of settlement and control, establishment of Jamestown. So the southern colonies are going to be settled pretty quickly. 1607, Jamestown is founded. The warmer climate is going to be an appeal to it. The geography is it's flat, and there's a lot of forests. So lumbering is going to be good at the beginning, but it'll quickly go into cash crops. Jamestown was founded in 1607, and that sets off really the American story. It's the first permanent English settlement. By 1619, we have Virginia with the House of Burgesses, and also with slavery by 1619. Plantations are very large farms. They were used for growing tobacco in places like Virginia, rice in the Carolinas. The interactions with Native Americans is going to vary. Not all were negative. Some were friendly enough. Maybe not quite as bad as you might see up in the New England colonies, where there was a lot more in the form of warfare. The House of Burgesses, as I mentioned, is the first representative body in the English colonies to become the United States. And like I said, after 1619 is slavery, and slavery becomes an institution that on which the Southern economy is built until the middle of the 19th century. Speaking of New England, their initial settlers are people looking for religious freedom, aka for themselves. Also, some people looking for a new life. It's not going to be as much into cash crops, as the weather and climate is not as conducive. Small farming, yes. Large farming, not so much. As oceanfront, there's in deep ports, there's going to be an area for trade, for commercial fishing and whaling. Not all relations between colonists in New England and Native Americans are terrible, but there is a lot of violence. We heard about King Philip's War. There's a lot of back and forth where entire Native villages are destroyed. It's not a very peaceful situation, especially when they didn't necessarily need, once they had established themselves where they didn't need the Native Americans to stay alive. The town hall is a huge thing in New England, where all of the voting population, aka white, wealthy, landowning males, would get together and actually vote on everything. There's a lot of religious tension, as we mentioned. It was built with religion in mind, but it had no tolerance for other religions. So that results in people being banished and ending up forming colonies in other places. Middle colonies, you're going to get still some farming, but it's not like in the South, but it's not as cold and mountainous as it is in the New England. And it's a little warmer. Deep rivers. So there's a lot of trade here as well. And you get people from a lot more varied backgrounds here. It was said that New Amsterdam had 18 languages being spoken there. Similar story with relations between Native Americans. Some areas, it's William Penn is very respectful. Others are more about just how can we get the land. Uh, I mentioned the Quakers, their Society of Friends. They were more of a pacifist um, society, very more open to other ideas, and that's where the abolitionist movement will eventually go. The English eventually take over New Amsterdam and make it theirs. I mentioned diversity there. Regional settlement patterns, we kind of just talked about. Um, People will move about, but if you're looking to become a farmer, the South was your way to go. Some of our darker history, the triangular trade that connected the Americas, Europe, and Africa. Um, People were kidnapped and sold into slavery in Africa and sent on the Middle Passage to the Americas. They would work in the fields, help produce natural resources that would be sent over and sold in Europe. And they take their money and also trade with Africa. It has a very negative impact on Africa, as it has a lot of people taken out of there. Um, Enslaved Africans have a very difficult life. They are treated harshly. They don't have a lot of opportunities to get out of that life. Families could be ripped apart. Um, Escaped slaves were at a great risk. They would be sent back and beaten, at least, or have their families sold off if they failed to follow the Underground Railroad to the north, and often through Michigan and into Canada. Um, and free Africans, at least, while it's not a fair life, there's still racism, but at least they had some opportunity for advancement in life and owning property in certain areas. Um, Cultures attempt to survive, whereas the slave culture is very heavily influenced by the West African origin of many of the slaves, or Caribbean origin for some of the second generation, third generation. What they have in their lives, they try to keep the Gullah Geechee area of the southeast Atlantic coast. That is an area where you see a lot of attempts to save the culture, the cooking, the language, and they do face an uphill battle. Go down here a little bit. We talked a little bit about the perspective of three different lives in recent days. The labor force, we go from cash crop farming, indentured servants aren't going to be enough. So then you end up seeing slavery as being a huge portion. And those regional differences are based on everything we've been talking about. I look forward to seeing what you know on tomorrow's assessment. Once you've watched this video, you're welcome to do any research based on those things you have seen. There is no assignment today. However, you are free between now and Saturday night to complete the social studies assessment. Areas where you do not score a 3, I will let you know, and you have the opportunity to try to make that up before the end of the quarter with any luck. Hope you all have Minwa, Mama P.